My name is Caitlin Troy, and this is my online learning environment video presentation for Education 583. At the end of my presentation, you'll be able to see my references for my literature review on K through 12 online learning, but these are some of the bullet points that I picked up from those 5 articles, which again you can find at the end of the presentation. First, technology gives educators resources to differentiate and individualize learning. Introverted students can join in on discussions and learning. Independence and motivation are necessary for successful engagement for students. So that can be both a pro and a con because it really does develop those skills for students. However, it is hard to teach independence and motivation, especially I think personally at a younger age. So that can also kind of be a con with online learning. My 4th bullet point from my research that I found, online learning maximizes customization and optimization. A range of students are served with online learning, and online learning will give students flexibility in the one-on-one experience that could be missing in traditional settings. And again, I will talk through this a little bit more throughout my own personal experience with my online lesson. To provide an overview of my mini lesson, I decided to teach the topic of transformations, and all the information that goes with transformations are translations, reflections, rotations, and dilations. This is obviously a mathematics learning area for the 8th grade, and my mini lesson was fully online. I had some potential concerns before beginning my week-long mini lesson. I was a little concerned about how students would be able to access technology and how they would be able to get support in a distance setting. I was also concerned about students' comfortability with video discussions, since using Flipgrid and video discussions was a key component for my online lesson. I attached on Schoology, which we will get to momentarily, some helpful information which includes my syllabus. So within my course syllabus, you can access information on how to get a hold of me. It gives a full description of the lesson with goals, objectives, and standards clearly stated. Says the necessary materials and resources, my expectations through online participation and policy. It also gives information on my assessment and grading and how I would accommodate for differentiated instruction with students for special needs, ELSE learners, and gifted students. Additionally, I provided a class schedule. I thought it'd be very helpful for students to have an overview of what the whole week is going to look like. This will also help support students with their independence, as they need to keep track of what they have to complete within these 5 days. So you can see through my tentative lesson plan and class schedule, which again can be found on our online platform of Schoology, that the students will have certain requirements and certain assignments and whatever different components from the 5 days clearly stated here on their class schedule. Another component that helped me plan my mini lesson was drawing out this storyboard. So the storyboard visually puts my thinking into this nice organization. So it shows all the day 1, 2, 3, and 4 and how they are similar and how they connect to each other, and then shows the assessment on the right and how that's a little bit separate. It also shows the miscellaneous, so like the introduction, the feedback, and what goes along with that. And it shows all the overview of the 4 days, so how every day there is some consistency with students being expected to engage in some of those options of lesson activities, have an assessment, and have an online discussion. So that's just really clearly showing my thinking with designing and implementing this mini lesson. My lesson navigation, I'm going to take you to Schoology and show you an overview of what my website and platform looks like and how students can use it. Here is the main page for my Schoology mini lesson. As you can see here, I have a welcome folder, an introduction folder, all the days really clearly stated, as well as a feedback folder. In the introduction folder is where students will find some of those first things they need to complete, which is the introduction quiz for me to get to know them, the personal video introduction, as well as just some other helpful information. I additionally, which I have stated throughout the mini lesson, I have a questions folder. And within the questions folder, there's that class schedule, my grading rubric and syllabus that I mentioned, as well as a questions discussion board where students can ask me questions or other students can answer their questions. And additionally, I have supplied all technology being used throughout this lesson and all the tutorials in case they have any questions or concerns throughout. So that's just a quick overview of my introduction folder. I'll just pick rotations, day 2. Again, as you saw on the storyboard, day 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all the same. There was the instructional materials where students had options. So here they could do videos, notes, or activities. And I tried to be very specific about what each of these activities or notes or videos look like. So students can pick from that, and then they would do rotations. Well, for this example, a rotations discussion, and then an assessment at the end. And so day 2, 3, and 4, and day 1, all look like that. So they all follow the same format, again, supporting that consistency. And then day 5 is using Edpuzzle, is the 4 different assessments, making sure that they have mastered that learning from the week. Again, as I mentioned, the feedback, which has the Google form feedback form. I also supplied the 9 events of instruction. So here I have outlined really specifically how I was very mindful with my planning and how I met throughout this week-long mini lesson all of the 9 events of instruction. So making sure I was really clear and purposeful with how I am supporting my students with this online learning environment. So that was just a quick overview of my lesson and how students will be navigating and going through the different days and different activities. As I planned and as I showed through the 9 levels of learning, I tried to be really purposeful about meeting the learner's interests and being very engaging, even in a not face-to-face type of environment. So as was evident, as I showed you through Schoolology, I had many interactive activities, which include programs like quizzes, Quizlet, and Desmos. I also had a lot of opportunities for collaboration. And that included Flipgrid, and again, Flipgrid was really great because it supports teacher-to-student collaboration and student-to-student collaboration and communication. Additionally, to meet the diversity of my learners and their interests, I had options within the content. So I have many videos, many readings, and many activities that students can pick and choose from to obtain the necessary information. And also, a lot of people don't think that assessment should be engaging, but especially in online learning, it should. So I had Edpuzzle videos to serve as my assessment, and Google Forms, which is a little more engaging than just having students print out a PDF copy and complete it that way or something of that nature. So those are the 4 ways I really tried to meet my students' interests. An emerging technology tool based off of research that I would consider incorporating into my future online lessons is podcasting, and specifically I looked at SoundCloud and the benefits of podcasting with SoundCloud. So SoundCloud, or podcasting in general, is really interactive, and it's another option with students, or another option with discussion for students. So instead of students posting a video or writing a text, they could also create a podcast. Additionally, it's helpful for the teacher to use as a lecture on a topic instead of just posting a video or a reading. It also has really great quality and flexibility. So in general, the research that I found, which I mentioned at the bottom of this slide and will be found on my reference slide, is that students are more likely to listen and have flexibility more than they do with watching or reading something. So, students can do it on their laptop, can do it on their phone, can do it on their tablet, listen to a podcast, and they don't even need to be stationary in one spot, and they can still engage in this podcast. And again, it's engaging. It's another way to differentiate the activities and just gives more options to students on how they want to engage in the information. How were online learning concerns resolved? So again, kind of circling back to the concerns I mentioned at the beginning of the lesson, I came up with these 3 ideas on how those concerns can be resolved. So number 1, students will have a buddy system to support or troubleshoot with technology issues. So something like giving them a Google form where they say, okay, I will reach out to this person in this way if I am having issues. Number 2, also, as I said, having availability through office hours, on Zoom as stated in my syllabus, on email, or making sure I have a questions discussion board where students can feel a more informal way to ask me for help. Number 3, as I just discussed, having options within discussions and allowing students to engage with the question prompts by either written text, video responses, or audio responses, as I stated, podcast style. And that again references back to that emerging technology tool based off research that I would try to include moving forward. My overall experience, so with my online lesson design, I learned that I need to have very clear expectations and directions. Additionally, I need to have very organized material, and I need to have diversity of activities for that differentiation. For my collaborative group work experience, I learned that communication needs to be very abundant. We have to have clear expectations for each other, so having set dates that we're going to complete something and meeting those dates, making sure that we're all sharing the workload, and making sure and offering support throughout. So if any group member had questions or concerns, we felt comfortable and were able to express those concerns and give support. My perspectives on K-12 online learning and online communication readiness overall, it is really helpful and really good for out-of-school technology environment, and to make sure, like I did, posting those tutorial videos so students and both parents have access to help if need. Again, that ties in with family support and making sure that as the instructor I'm answering emails and still being readily available even though I'm not physically with them. Technology skills, like I said, posting those tutorial videos. Time management skills, so as I did and showed, having that class schedule so students knew exactly what they needed to do every single day, and none of that was not clear. Organization skills, so I try to be consistent among my folders and making sure every folder looked the exact same way so students knew exactly what they needed to accomplish. This also, with online learning in general, supports independent learning skills, and making sure my Flipgrid and making sure I'm having discussion boards also helps with online collaborative learning skills. In conclusion, overall, I would think about implementing blended learning into my future classroom. I would consider having a question discussion board available online, perhaps through Google Classroom, even if my whole lessons are traditional. So to elaborate on that point a little bit, even if I had no online components, maybe making myself available for parents and for students in another way through a discussion forum online. And that way, if I can't check my email that night and students have a question about an assignment due the next day, perhaps another student can answer their question, and that helps their digital and person collaboration. And lastly, overall, I learned that I need to always give choice, have clear expectations and directions, and be consistent / organized with management and materials for online learning, especially. Here's my reference page where, again, a lot of my information was backed up by literature, and my main points for my literature review back in the beginning of the presentation came from these 5 sources. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my online learning environment video presentation.